This is an ABC News special report.
Good afternoon to all of you. I'm Diane Sawyer here at ABC News headquarters in New York, and we do have the breaking news of a shooting at an elementary school in Newtown, Connecticut. And you heard that right. It is unthinkable. An elementary school 45 miles
in Newtown today, shock gave way to the horror of reality. The 26 victims killed at the school, including the 20 children, all died from multiple gunshot wounds.
All the ones that I know of at this point were caused by the long weapon.
The rifle, one of 3 weapons found near shooter Adam Lanza in Sandy Hook Elementary School. His victims, 6 adult women, 16 6-year-olds, and 4 7-year-olds.
A week after the tragic shooting at Newtown, Connecticut, George Keene, president of the NRA, and Wayne LaPierre, executive vice president and chief executive officer of that organization, called a press conference.
Before Congress reconvenes, before we engage in any lengthy debate over legislation, regulation, or anything else, as soon as our kids return to school after the holiday break, we need to have every single school in America immediately deploy a protection program proven to work, and by that, I mean armed security.
Reaction to the NRA's proposals, to put it mildly, was less than enthusiastic. The press and editorial cartoonists had a field day. But, as usual, Mr. LaPierre gave as good as he got.
In a race to the bottom, media conglomerates compete with one another to shock, violate, and offend every standard of civilized society by bringing an even more toxic mix of reckless behavior and criminal cruelty right into our homes every minute, every day, every hour of every single year. A child growing up in America today witnesses 16,000 murders and 200,000 acts of violence by the time he or she reaches the ripe old age of 18. And throughout it all, too many in the national media, their corporate owners, and their stockholders act as silent enablers, if not complicit co-conspirators.
Pounding away at what he referred to as, quote, the national media machine, unquote, he bludgeoned the press for both their ignorance and their complicity in the unholy alliance that he argued produced the gore-soaked movies of Hollywood, the anti-gun bias of the lamestream media conglomerates, violent video games, and the conspiracies of what he called the political class. No one raised in the second half of the 20th century is going to deny that the battle over gun control has been going round and round and round for a very long time. But despite the flood of high-profile gun-related tragedies of the past and the sad, soul-cutting images of the all-too-recent present, and despite the seemingly endless reams of legislation and research devoted to controlling gun violence, despite all of this, the simple fact is that the National Rifle Association and gun rights advocates continue to gain ground, both legally, with the Supreme Court's 2008 decision in Columbia v. Heller and McDonald v. Chicago, and physically, with the dramatic expansion of the so-called concealed carry laws in state after state after state. In many ways, the growing power of the NRA and gun advocates is a reflection of a much bigger political battle that has ebbed and flowed. But that observation misses a key point and a core issue in the debate about, quote, gun control. Put simply, why, despite all the furor, has the NRA been so successful? One obvious answer is pretty simple. The NRA's political operatives are very well connected. David Keene, the NRA's president, started his political involvement off in 1969 with a run for the Wisconsin State Senate. One must add, however, that that came with an endorsement from none other than President Richard Milhous Nixon. He followed that triumph up with a tour as a political aide to none other than Vice President Spiro T. Agnew. Mr. Keene added to those impressive credentials with a long and highly successful tour as chairman for the American Conservative Union, the folks that present the highly influential CPAC conferences each year, where conservative politicos compete to see who has the most juice and the biggest following. The real heart and voice of the NRA, however, is its CEO and executive vice president, Mr. Wayne LaPierre. Mr. LaPierre has been running the NRA since the early 1990s, when his fire and brimstone, take no prisoners response to the passage of the Brady Bill earned him a reputation as a master spin doctor for the pro-gun lobby. And perhaps, more importantly, it also made him one of the patron saints of the GOP's wildly successful counterattack against the Democrats in 1994, which in turn launched the national political career of Newt Gingrich, one of the NRA's leading contemporary champions. Today's talking heads would probably refer to Mr. LaPierre as a masterful spin doctor. But in the 1920s and 30s, when the modern concept of political spin was just emerging as a recognizable profession, people would have been more likely to refer to Mr. LaPierre as a master of the dark art of propaganda. Propaganda was an art that this man, Joesph Goebbles, knew well. Born in 1897, he graduated with a PhD in literature from Heidelberg University in 1921 and went on from there to become a less than successful playwright, author, newspaperman, and sometime bank clerk, who eventually was drawn into the National Socialist Workers' Party, or NSDAP, better known to most contemporary Americans as the Nazi Party. Herr Goebbels helped champion the Nazis' cause through their Berlin newspaper Der Angriff, or The Attack, and through a series of dramatic rallies and ceremonies designed to sell Germans on the wisdom of Herr Hitler's policies. By 1930, Herr Goebbels had made a reputation as a master propagandist, and Hitler officially appointed him as the head of the Ministry of Public Enlightenment and Propaganda. What brings Herr Goebbels into our story about gun control is the fact that in the course of his rise to power, Herr Goebbels happily outlined what he thought were the key principles of propaganda. And it's obvious that that basic set of principles, either consciously or unconsciously, has had a profound impact on the NRA's efforts in the battle over what Mr. LaPierre has labeled Second Amendment rights. Rather than just sling a string of negative links at Mr. LaPierre and the NRA, let's take a few seconds to put some of Herr Goebbels' basic principles of propaganda out front and then move to the various segments of the NRA playbook that I've provided to take a look at how they've been showing up over the course of the debate on gun control. Here's 5 basic principles on propaganda drawn from Herr Goebbels' Principles of Propaganda. If you tell a lie big enough and keep repeating it, people will eventually come to believe it. The most brilliant propagandist technique will yield no success unless one fundamental principle is borne in mind constantly. It must confine itself to a few points and repeat them over and over. Propaganda must label events and people with distinctive phrases or slogans. Propaganda must diminish anxiety other than concerning the consequences of defeat. Propaganda must facilitate the displacement of aggression by specifying the targets for hatred. Now, when you're ready, take a look at some of the evidence I've piled up to prove what I'm saying.
Minister Dr. Goebbels spricht zur Jugend. Meine Kommilitonen, deutsche Männer und Frauen, das Zeitalter eines überspitzten jüdischen Intellektualismus ist nun zu Ende.